can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90X, Atari, many more, and how they overcome big challenges in life and business. Today, our sponsor is Rise25.com, where entrepreneurs of 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses come together live and in person every few months to solve their biggest business challenges and leave with lifelong friendships. Check out Rise25.com. It's run by myself and co-founder John Corcoran. It's application only. I know Conor is a part of Mastermind because I did watch a video of you talking about it. Today, I'm really excited. We have Conor McCluskey, founder of BombBomb. BombBomb is an interactive email service provider. And basically, you can make quick and easy personalized videos embedded in an email to wow friends, family, or business relationships. I first heard of BombBomb because I got a BombBomb, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So I had to find out more, so we're here. He co-founded a service company in the multifamily housing industry that grew to 60 employees, over $1.7 million in just 4 years. If that wasn't enough, Conor is also an owner in a vineyard and winery called Proper Wines in Walla Walla, Washington, and it was named the best new winery by Seattle Magazine. Conor, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So much good stuff to talk about here. Why the name BombBomb first?
At the time I was trying to figure out a good name for a company. I was a big Seth Godin fan, and this was in 2005 or so. And I was like, man, I want something memorable. You know, the Purple Cow had just come out, and it's something that can be remarked upon. And so I was like, somebody had said, hey, Conor, you're the bomb.com slang. And I was like, BombBomb. And so
Conor, you're the bomb would not be a good name of a company. But
thebomb.com, I tried to buy from this Japanese artist. He wouldn't sell it to me. And then I was able to find somebody who owned BombBomb and bought it from them. And that's
the original idea video and email?
Yeah. So,
and this, go back. When did you start? I want to go back to, because you have a really untraditional kind of education upbringing, I guess you could say. But tell me first about, when did you start BombBomb?
Yeah, so I started BombBomb. It was officially we incorporated in 2006.
Okay.
What's
the video landscape then?
It's YouTube isn't even bought yet by Google. There is no video camera on any phones yet. So
you were fighting an uphill battle. What was the original idea?
It was rough. I was selling billboards and built up my business to about 150 clients. And
selling billboards.
And couldn't stay in front of those people. And I was like, people buy me, they don't buy billboards. And that relationship and me hanging out with those people, but I couldn't get in front of them every month. And I was like, if I could just get in front of them every month and be myself and hang out with them and do all that. And I was like,
you're a likable guy, they'll want to buy more from you.
Yeah. How can I send myself and get personal, because it's all about the relationship. Business 100%. Is about the relationship. Yeah. And so I was like, man, somebody should probably do this already. So I went online, looked for a company that did it. Nobody did it. And I shot a video with my buddy who is the video editing professor at Colorado College. We shot a video in his class of me and a green screen walking on, thanking people for my business and for their business, and sent it out to about 150 people, built some HTML.
How did you send it out at that time? Because Video is not
some
prevalent.
HTML and then hosted the video and cobbled together a bunch of technologies, and it worked.
It did. So could people play the video in an email at the time, or did it click off?
No, it was a link to a hosted landing page, and
which at that time is still pretty cutting edge, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I sent it out, I had, and I had national, regional, local clients, everyone from the local realtor to PF Chang's was my client. And people were calling me like, how the heck did you do that? We want the name of the company, and that did that. And I was like, man, okay.
Conors the bomb.
So at that point I was like, man, I should start a company.
So what happened after that? So you're getting all this demand just because you're sending it. And it is a viral thing, because I was sent one and I was like, this is really cool. I love the person, it's so personalized and it gets my attention. It's not your typical email. Plus it probably takes them a shorter amount of time to do that than to write a long email, and it's received better. So there's a big viral component. Anyone who receives one wants to become a customer.
Exactly.
So what do you do? Yeah.
It's so that was a part of the success, is that it's got a virality to it, and it kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy. When people use it, more people hear about it, and it just goes.
So people are demanding it at the time. So what happens next? When do you get your first official BombBomb customer?
So between then and my first customer, I had to learn software the hard way. So I quit my job, cashed in my 401k, all my savings, started the company. So
you went all in right away.
Basically, yeah. It was, I didn't know what I didn't know, software was a unknown thing for a sales guy, and so I had to learn that the hard way by doing it all wrong. And so by the time we launched our product, it was September 7th of 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And
So what did you learn the hard way? What were some of the early hard lessons? Anyone right now who's thinking of starting a company, specifically software company, what's some of the don'ts?
It's a lot easier now. I didn't know what to ask developers. And so they were like, we need to build this in Java. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it was just, and then we outsourced stuff to India. So I'd be on these calls and they would be like, it works. And then I'd be like, no, it doesn't. And it was just,
It was like the software and development team was a big hurdle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Big hurdle. I mean, it's a lot easier today because there's shops and different things that you can, different shops that just specialize in this, and it's well documented on the internet, and there's a lot of blogs you can read about it. But back in the day, it was not like that.
So when did you actually have a working product that you launched? Like, how did that happen with the first customer?
September of 2007. It took me till February of 2008 before we actually had a customer.
Mm-hmm.
It was a casino.
Casino.
It was called Bronco Billy's Casino, and it's about an hour away. And how I got the deal was, I said I would do the videoing for them for free if they bought the email product.
So what do you mean by, what were you going to do for them?
So I went and videotaped with and edited, built commercials for them. This was before the time of the iPhone and video on your mobile phone or your laptop or whatever. And so I would go out and shoot. So our first 3 customers, I ended up signing up 3 customers: Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center and Waters Winery out of Walla Walla, Washington.
Really? But at the time, where are you based out of? Are you in Colorado?
Colorado Springs.
You were in Colorado at the time.
I would drive wherever, film and edit video. I taught myself video editing through my buddy at CC. I audited his class for free, and that's how I got the deals.
So what's interesting, Conor, about that is it sounds like you found the pain points of your customers, why they weren't buying, and you basically solved that pain for them. Because video is not prevalent at the time, and they're like, how are we going to do this video? And you said, well, I'll do it for you. Is that?
That was the number one objective.
Yeah.
So the objective was, oh, yeah, great idea. How do I get a video?
Right.
I got to pay for a production company to come out and all this stuff. And so I said, I'll just be the production company.
Well, because you were a little bit early, right?
We were early. Yeah. Even though, at the time I was like, oh man, we're so far behind, but yeah.
So what was the first hire? I mean, I look at the BombBomb team and you have a slew of staff doing various jobs.
Yep.
When did it stop being you and maybe like an outsourced software development team?
We hired our first employee, I think 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And she was the original email designer for the Fine Arts Center. And I hired her full time. She was the first full time employee.
Yeah.
And then shortly after, we hired our first software engineer.
Yeah. That's a big decision at the time, right?
Yeah, very big. I didn't pay myself for about 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how do you live? Just off of savings and things like that? Because you bootstrap this, right?
Yeah. We've raised a little bit of friends and family, so when you have payroll and stuff, you gotta beg your aunt who is in town for $25,000 of her retirement that she's willing to lose.
You want 10 times this? I have the solution. You're just gonna have to wait 15 years.
We've used debt in the past to, like, I call it the loan shark loan. So at a point we were probably 12 people. We were growing the business by about 200 customers a month.
Wow, that's amazing.
But it was a recurring revenue stream, right? And so it's small numbers, but it was stacking. Yeah. And so we were at, I don't know, I think it was like $40,000 in recurring revenue. Yeah. So, and we were burning probably about $40,000 a month.
Because the more you grow, you need more team members. You need
you got to have the marketing. You got to go. You just got to go. You got to go. And so I knew that in a certain period of time that I would be able to bridge that gap, but I just needed like a year.
Yeah.
And so I convinced. Have you ever heard of like a factoring invoice
No.
So there's this deal that companies, they'll sell their invoices for a certain amount, and then like every day you get charged like 3% or something like that. So I convinced this lawyer guy who ran this thing called Invoice Bankers I showed him the lifetime value of a SaaS customer. And then I said, I'll discount it at 60%. So I said, hey, our average customer is this and blah, blah, blah. The lifetime value of this customer is $550. Discount it by 60% for your risk. And then for every new customer, loan me $240. And the reason why I call it the loan shark is because you had to pay it back in 6 months, including principal and interest. It ended up being like 47%.
Wow.
I, myself and my business partner personally guaranteed $550,000
wow.
in debt. And we ended up paying it back within about a year, but we were it was.
You just needed the cash to grow the company.
I just needed the cash to grow the company. I knew the business model. I knew what I had to do, but it was put all the chips in.
Conor, I mean, this is the real. I love hearing the real story. Sometimes this gets. If you look at mainstream media, there's a lot of glamour and ritz involved, but the reality is probably for anyone in the early days and even beyond that, it's not easy. What are some of the thoughts that go through your head in those 4 years? Because, some people are thinking, well, like, is this worth it? I haven't paid myself for 4 years, or does that not even enter your mind? You're like, this is growing. I can see this happening. Are there doubts creeping in at this point ever, or no?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like, obviously this doesn't work. I'm not making any money. But at the same time, you have doubts. Like, you look around and there's like, everybody's just killing it.
Well, from the outside, right?
Correct.
And most likely they're probably in the same situation you're in, or a lot of them.
Typically, anywhere you go, you got problems. And so it doesn't matter if you're Google or Facebook.
What keeps you going, like, during those times, during that 4 years?
It's, friends. It was interesting. There's a few key people that, like a CFO of a big software or a fairly large size software company, I would go out to lunch with these people and it would be like, okay, we got 300 customers. We got 600, and they would just be like, just keep on going. And it would be, the last day, we need 50 grand or we're not going to hit payroll. And I meet somebody, or I like send a check over here and I'm moving this and I'm not paying this and and it was like, but when you hear from your customers that it changes their lives,
right,
and you're making impact, it's like, you're like, if I can just tell more people about this, if I can just
traction.
Get through.
Yeah.
And so
talk about one of those early customers, because that is a good way of getting through. Like, you're delivering a high quality, valuable service, and listening to customers who love it is probably a way to say, okay, I got to keep going with this. What's one or two of those early customers that you were getting that like some of the results they were getting, you were getting that feedback that kept you going?
Yeah, a big one was his name's Steve Passanelli. He was a vice president at Move, which owned Realtor.com, and this guy just showed up, found us on Google, signed up, and he ran a blog called Tech Savvy Agent. And we had realtors and all sorts of different people using the product. Yeah. And this guy, he did a review on BombBomb. And within a day, we signed up like 40 people. And we're like, wow, we're signing up like 4 people a day.
Yeah.
And at the time, and he writes this review, and it puts us on the map in real estate, which is about 50% of our business now.
Yeah, I could see, like, when you go on the BombBomb site, there's like sales pros, real estate, mortgage, automotive teams. So I was assuming those are kind of the core
real
people that are using it.
Big for us. And so he really set it off for us, and he was speaking in front of, tens of thousands of people every day. And a part of his presentation was on BombBomb, and he would use it, and he would talk about us.
Right.
And
that's huge.
And I'll never forget the first time I met him. We went to a Keller Williams conference. It was the first thing I built. We called it the body bag, and we bought it. We got approved by them at the last minute, and we needed a stand, but we couldn't afford it for the TV for this little 10 by 10 booth we had. And we showed up there, and I manufactured with a Dremel Moto tool a TV stand.
Okay.
And put it in this body bag and shipped it through FedEx down to here so we could have this TV stand. And we're going to meet him, and he speaks in front of, I think it was like I don't know, 50, 20,000 real estate agents. We sold in like 4 days. We doubled our business in 4 days.
Wow.
We went from 500 customers to 1,000 customers. I didn't go to the bathroom. We would show up at 6:30 in the morning and there'd be like 50 people around our booth like, why aren't you here? I'm like, this doesn't open till 8 o'clock.
It's a good problem to have.
And so it was like, man, this is going to be great. So that was
now you have other problems, like
yeah,
first world problems. So how do you onboard when it doubles your business overnight? Mm-hmm. How do you manage that?
All hands on deck.
You don't go to the bathroom for weeks?
It was, we went back home from Florida. This was in Orlando, Florida, and we came back to Colorado, and we're like, okay, we got to figure this out. So we were like, we used our own product was one of the ways that we did it. But, we were like, got to do webinars for these people and figure all this out. And, on the plane ride back, we're figuring it out. And, it was crazy.
What's some of the inflection points kind of you remember with the product? People because I'm sure the product got shaped through the lifetime so far.
Mobile was big for us. Mm-hmm. The video, it was, we went from, I talked about the, this kind of me shooting video. And then the iPhone got the video camera, and people stopped having that objection.
Yeah, it caught up with your.
Like all of a sudden we just stopped having that question.
Yeah.
So mobile was a big inflection point for us. Gmail, recording video directly to Gmail. That's one of our products we have.
Yeah.
It's that was a game changer. That's mostly what I use. I'll use the the sending option to multiple people. Probably quarterly, but daily I'm looking at. I'm using the Gmail product. It's
talk about integrations, because I'm sure you were getting that feedback, and you can't fulfill on all feedback. So what's your process for taking in the feedback and deciding yes or no, we can't incorporate this Gmail function that people want?
Yeah. Product prioritization. It honestly starts in we do a strategic planning process. You might have heard of it. It started off with a book called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits.
Mm-hmm.
It's now
Vern Harnish. Is that by Vern Harnish?
Yep, Vern Harnish.
Yep.
And I implemented that 8 years ago, and so that starts off. It looks at big, hairy, audacious goal, which is kind of the 10-year, breaks it down into 3, 1, and quarterly. And so a lot of the product stuff has come out of that, which is actually is not as traditional as a lot of the way people do kind of product roadmap stuff. Mm-hmm. And we have been very nimble when it comes to that, because we look at, SWOT analysis on a quarterly, annual basis. We look at the product on from a leadership standpoint, where we look at customer feedback, employee feedback, and then we kind of look at the bigger kind of landscape, both on an annual and quarterly basis. We're actually typically the product kind of roadmap, or where we go, typically 1 out of the top 5 things that are coming down the pipeline are either changed or redone, even on a quarterly basis. And so it's very fluid when it comes
because you get customer feedback probably every day, and then the team gives feedback. So you log all of that and then kind of tabulate it and look at it as a kind of leadership standpoint.
Yeah, and it's kind of the the Apple kind of way. The loudest, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It can't always be that way. And you kind of have to be forward thinking and being like,
Right.
okay, where's everything going based on these trends, and how are we going to deliver things that people don't know what they need, kind of give them what they want, and then get them going, and then give them what they actually need.
Yeah. Because I'm looking through the website, and I would think a big pain point in this type of business would be integrations. With development, that what you've done with Gmail, and then there's a Google Chrome app to it, and how that connects. I mean, the user just pushes a button, but there's so much back end stuff that goes in, and you have like, I think, Android, Apple, Gmail. There's like a Zillow Group integration or something. How do you decide? No. There is.
Yeah. We have a Zillow integration. Yeah, we've got tons of those.
I mean, what's one you had to turn down? Because it just, even though you were getting the requests, it just wasn't as big as the other opportunities.
Yeah, so we manage that in multiple in kind of a cascading type deal. So we look at partnerships on a strategic level, and then it breaks down into kind of 3 different categories.
Yeah.
And at the low level, obviously in real estate early on, nobody did open APIs. And so that's really tough. And so we look at that, and so people come to us constantly and integrate with us. Yeah. Almost daily. We launch almost integration partners daily. Oh. And then we look at that anyway through, and that's based on a bunch of different criteria, from number of people on their platform, what's the strategic opportunity, how does it fit into our customer base, stuff like that. So there's a whole myriad of there's a questionnaire we have people go through if they want to be a partner, and different levels. So
as far as the product, what's on the horizon? If you could talk about anything, where are things going with video? And then I want to go back a little bit and see, like, what have some of the big, changes in the product for the better? What does that look like?
Well, we've got a new thing that I can't talk about, otherwise our guys are going to kill me.
I don't want anyone killing you.
It's very top secret right now, but in any software company, one of the biggest things is people don't use it. They'll buy it, they don't use it. And so we kind of have been working on this problem, both in client success and on the product side, and all over the business of how do you get people to use it.
That's great. Yeah, how do you do it?
And because ultimately we know if you use BombBomb, you're going to win. And you're going to win more opportunities by staying face-to-face with people and connecting in relationship with them. And so the problem that a lot of people have is they don't know what to say. They don't, and they just don't know. They don't use it. And so
it's a habitual thing. They're used to maybe responding to email with just an email, and they're not used to, recording a video or whatever the case is.
It's not a habit.
Yeah.
It's not a habit. And so we've been working on a product that should be coming out shortly. We're teasing a little bit online right now. We're looking at a launch at the beginning or at the end of this month, beginning of February, in the real estate vertical specifically, that will help with some of those challenges. And so we are super excited. The whole team has been focusing on this. And we think it's a new kind of category for the way people engage and interact with people and build relationships. So,
when was the last major product release, or not when, but what was the last? Like equivalent to now. Obviously, you can't talk about it, but the last one, like, we can't talk about this, and it released. What was the last one that was a groundbreaking kind of change in BombBomb, or what was released?
Probably Gmail. Gmail is probably the biggest thing that kind of hit for us. That was a kind of a groundbreaking thing. Gmail we have done really well with it. People use it daily. One of those kind of things. Obviously, we're constantly iterating, making things better, and constantly releasing software. But big kind of product would be Gmail.
How long does that take you and the team to actually release and execute on? Because that seems like a big undertaking.
It has been. That's a great question. There's a bunch of different pieces to it, but
there's probably a million pieces to it. Yeah.
Yeah, the quarters.
Right.
Hasn't quite been a year, but yeah.
That's pretty quick, actually.
Yeah.
I think. How do you manage? Like I'm thinking. Okay, I use a bunch of different things. Like for instance, Contactually. Right?
Yeah.
And I think there was some stuff online I saw between you and Contactually. You both, or they, I think, serve also real estate too.
Yep.
How does it work if, like Contactually, we want to integrate what you're doing with BombBomb into Contactually? Is that possible to do? Like if I sign on my Contactually eventually, then I could use BombBomb, or is that because there has to be individual users that are signing up for BombBomb? So
absolutely.
Are there how does a partnership opportunity like that?
Yeah, so Contactually has been a great partnership for us.
Yeah.
Zvi and Tony, I know those guys. I've known them for a while.
Yeah.
Super smart guys, done really well. And so if you're familiar with Contactually, buckets obviously sync with BombBomb, and then being able to reply to people with videos.
I didn't know that actually, and I use Contactually. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that is a great way to personalize those kind of I forget what they call it, not touch,
like the scale mail or something.
That touch that when you're touching your bucket, or it's a reminder, it gives you who you should be contacting today or whatever. You're able to reply to that very personally with video.
I like that. Okay, I'll have to check that out. And then but there's an integration there, so people sign up individually through BombBomb, and then they sync it with their buckets and Contactually.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly.
It's good to know. I love I love Contactually too. So culture, as you grow in the company, how do you manage the culture of the company?
That is a challenging thing. Values is where it obviously starts. And so early on, when we were, I think, 4 people, I launched our values to the company, and talking about those values. One of the things we do in our quarterly offsites is you have to be able to tell a story about every value in the company. And so everybody goes around, and so relationships or fun, how are we living out fun?
Yeah.
How are we building this as a part of our culture? And so if you can't tell stories about it, or how your customers are having fun, or how your employees or your people, and it's got to start with the top, right? So like if I'm not having fun,
right,
how the heck is anybody else going to have fun?
Right.
And so that is a challenge once you get to, 75, 80 people, and and there's evolutions to it, right? Not everybody can be around one table anymore.
What do you mean?
We used to have
because it's so big.
Lunches around a table with 12 people, and you're hanging out, and it's Taco Tuesday, and that's a part of the culture, but it's a real challenge as you grow to keep that going. And so one of the things we focus on is we have what's called a people team, and a part of the people team is to help build out the values of BombBomb and keep it in the culture. And ultimately, you know, one of the things that came out of the people team was what we call Awesome Office.
Okay.
And so
I like the sound of that.
Office, every 2 weeks, it is voted or you nominate a person for the Awesome Office. And what you nominate is you say, okay, Conor, I, Chad, am nominating Conor for the core value of fun. And Conor took me out, and we played foosball, and he kicked my butt, and we had a blast. And, you know, it really, you know, got me out, had me have fun because I've been on the phone all day and all this. And at lunch on Friday, when we get the whole team together, we read all the nominations. And then the person that's in the Awesome Office, which is a corner office that's private, it's got a sound bar, it's got a fridge, you get it stocked with whatever you want, and you got a couch in there, and it's got windows and you know, huge windows, and it's real private, and you can shut the door, and that person gets to pick who's the next person in the Awesome Office. And so it's breeding a culture of recognition of people, because it's everybody from the support people to the developers, and then you're building this public camaraderie of people recognizing other people for living the core values.
I love that.
And so it's been a really cool thing. And
how did you come up with that?
It's our director of education. He heard about an Awesome Office situation in Chicago.
Okay.
It was some company in Chicago he visited, and they had I don't think they did the core values thing. Like, that was our kind of take on it. But it was a company in Chicago. He was visiting a friend, and their company did what was called the Awesome Office. And it was like, you got a week or something like that there.
So how often does it rotate?
Every 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yep. Yeah.
What are some of the core values? Fun is obviously a big one.
Yep. So relationships is our number one core value.
Mm-hmm.
So ties right into the product, build relationships. Yeah. Humility is a key core value. We just hired what we call a people director, which is kind of like the head of HR. And the reason why she took the job was, she said, the fact that you had humility as a core value was why I took this job. And so, leading with those things, so core value, flexibility, which is kind of the, you know, what I originally had as change. If you aren't constantly changing, if you're not reinventing yourself, if you're not, you know, constantly being flexible to the, you know, the daily things, then you're going to get run over. And then service, just serving people, taking care of people, making sure everybody's taken care of. Yeah. And so but relationships and people are kind of the key thing. Yeah.
Conor, on that note, on the service note, so I'm, you know, doing research. I'm scouring the internet for BombBomb stories, videos. So I find this one post way back when, from 7-8 years ago. Okay. And this guy posts, I'm reading this, and it's a scathing review of BombBomb. Not really a review of BombBomb, but they said it misrepresented what was going on. And I'm like, oh, God. But in the middle of, you know what I'm talking about? In the middle of the post, you don't know what I'm talking about. In the middle of the post, he completely changes his tune. So it's this long post and basically saying BombBomb misrepresented. This is a long time ago because it's claiming like it does video inside email and it doesn't. And he posted something on Twitter, and one thing he said is immediately someone said, and he didn't call out your company, basically said this company is saying it does video inside email, but it doesn't. And then suggestions on Twitter came back, oh, you need to try BombBomb. It does this. And he's like, what's going on? The same company I'm talking about is the company people are recommending me to use. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And the service part strikes me as like immediately Conor message, the founder messages me and he's like, and he didn't mention your company name at all. Like, how can we help? What's going on? And basically did a full explanation and completely turned, the post went from, this company is claiming something it's not doing. It wasn't really a scathing post, but to this is the best company. They serviced me right away. They made explanations and things like that. So you know what I'm talking about with that? Okay.
Yeah, I remember.
I mean, this is an old post.
Yeah,
This must be.
I forget his name.
This must be 8 years old at this point.
Yeah. I remember. I remember seeing it on Twitter, and I tracked him down.
Right.
And because I couldn't figure out who he was, and I ended up calling him. Yeah. And talking to him, Bill is like, "Hey man, well, iOS and here's why I did,
You're like, there's a percentage of ones that don't get open, but there's a percentage that do.
Here's how this works, and why we do it this way, and
So I guess even back then, 8 years ago, you're still living by the core values. What's one of your favorite stories from one of the core values? Either one of the staff has said or you've experienced. It's on like the core values Hall of Fame stories. I want a Hall of Fame tab on your website and hear the core values Hall of Fame stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, what would be? I'm trying to think.
It could be under any of your, any category: relationships, fun, humility, flexibility, service. That's my, so far with my research, that was one of my favorites, that service story.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now. I'm going back to our offsite we were just at. I'll give you one. So we have BDRs. This girl Melanie, she's a BDR, so she sets appointments for all of our inside sales reps. And so Melanie, of course, the overachiever she is, she decides that every new BombBomb employee deserves a decoration of their with hand sign deals and balloons and everything, and she took it upon herself. She does not get paid for this. She does not. This is not a part of her job description. And this came up in our deal of flexibility. Of she takes this on, and we've hired 15 people in the last month, and she did this for every single one of them. And she goes out of her way to stay late and to decorate their little area and put up balloons and have people sign cards and welcome and all this stuff, and just loving on people and like trying to make people feel welcome. And she doesn't have to do that. Yeah. And it's just awesome. It's really awesome that she does that, and it's like nobody asked her to do it. It
sets the tone early on.
It does, and so new people get that, and I mean there's no protocol for that. Like they would just be stuck with a laptop, and I mean,
if it were you, you'd be like, "Here's your station. I'll see you later." You have a problem, I'm open.
I think you got to do something like, I don't know, like, like I would be a horrible onboarder. Like, I'm like, you just go to work, like, figure it out. And so that's just I love that example. And it's just a thankless kind of job that she just took on. And then she didn't have time even to do that.
I love that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Conor.
Yeah.
From the marketing perspective, early on, you're probably calling people, and then you get this break with the person talking about you on stage. What do you do now that helps get the word out?
Oh, man, what don't we do? A lot of it is the word of mouth type thing, people using it and then talking about us. We do some online kind of, marketing stuff, your typical content marketing. Our guys are, Steve and Ethan. If you don't know those guys, they're awesome. They're some of the best in the business I've ever met. Just smart marketing minds. The whole kind of, we do everything from Facebook to AdWords to trade shows to, as non-technical as this sounds, where we do, or where myself still does well in marketing, is being on a trade show floor and meeting people, whether they're customers or going up and being like, "Hey man, how can I tell you about BombBomb? What's going on?" Like, just meeting people face to face still wins the day. Yeah. And so, and I'm old school, old fashioned, that way.
Well, that's sort of the premise of BombBomb, right? I mean, that's the premise of BombBomb, which is face to face.
Face to face. And so, and just being yourself. It's like people miss this polished, I'm just Conor. I'm the same guy that I was.
It's sort of what people have to get over when using BombBomb too. If they feel like they need to make everything perfect and polished, they're not going to get anything out the door, and you just have to become okay with it. But now the challenge is you have to get other people to be okay with it. And that's why I'm curious of when you release the new product or a portion of BombBomb, getting people to use it, there's probably a component there.
It's one of the biggest kind of customer feedback we get. Yeah. I don't like the way I look on camera.
It's a tough one. I mean, that's a deep-seated, even like, startup founders or whoever who they know they just need to get the product out there, need it to be perfect, or I'll just do that once I do this. And it's probably the same with every single person creating a video. Yep.
And then you just don't end up doing it, which then makes you buy a product you don't use. And so, it's one of the biggest, it's human nature, I mean,
it's tough. Yeah.
Just who we are. And that is what will make this unique always, because not everybody will do it. It's the same. It's the sales game. Most people just don't do the basics.
Yeah.
It's like, show up. Just show up.
So do you focus, Conor, on real estate trade shows, or do you branch out into other types of trade shows?
We've dabbled a little bit, but our main focus in marketing has been real estate up to this point. We've dabbled in some mortgage. We've dabbled, I was at Dreamforce. That's Salesforce is a big
huge,
deal for us. And so we're starting to dabble in those things a little bit, which we're a big Salesforce user, and we think there's a lot of other opportunity out there. This is a horizontal play. Anybody can use this product.
Yeah,
from
100%.
My wife sending our Christmas card to the realtor to a salesperson. Anybody can use it.
Yeah. So talk about your love for Kenya.
Yeah. So back in 2001, went to Kenya and was in a slum. Met a guy.
Why were you in Kenya?
I went on a trip with a pastor, and they were doing music festivals. and I was randomly signed up for this this deal. It was like, what are your interests? And I was like, I'm interested in Africa. And I ended up going on this trip, and I was the only guy that went on the trip.
All women.
I showed up at the airport, and I thought it was going to be a trip of a bunch of people. I was the only guy, and this guy went off, and I ended up being in Africa by myself, basically. And
you mean it was just you? It's not like you were a group full of women.
Pastor guy that was like leading it, but like he got sick or didn't want to, and so I met all these reggae singers. This
sounds like a crazy story.
Other guys, and I was like, "Can I just hang with you guys?" And they're like, "Okay, we'll drop you off at your hotel every night." And so I like immersed myself into this Kenyan culture, and basically. That was right before 9/11. I got back 2 days before 9/11. About 2 years later, I get a call from the reggae singer, and this guy's like, "Hey, my brother's coming in to America. You mind if he stays with you?" And I'm like, "Okay." So I go to Denver International Airport, pick up this guy. And we get in the car, and I'm like, "So, what are you doing in America? How long you staying?" And he was like, "You're the only person I know in America, and I'll be here for 2 months." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And so 2 months.
What was he doing here?
He was a pastor, and he was trying to raise awareness about this slum. And
Are you married at the time?
I was not married.
Okay, good. Your wife's like, "Who's this guy, and why is he staying with us for 2 months?" You're getting kicked out.
I was like, "Oh man!" And so he was. So I ended up becoming good friends with him. He stopped eating for a day. He found these kids in the slum in this area. And it was Sudanese refugees would come down. It's in northern kind of Kenya. And they would come down, and this is where they would settle, in the slum. These kids are like starving. And so him and his wife said, "We're going to stop eating 1 day a week. And the money we would have for that food, we're going to feed as many kids as we can."
Wow.
So all these kids come out of the woodwork.
That's really amazing. Yeah.
And so I end up going there with them, become really good friends with them. And I met a guy that ended up starving to death.
Wow.
So I looked at this guy in the eye, and he was like, "I'm going to starve to death." And I was like, it didn't register to me that someone could starve to death. And 2 weeks after I left, I got a call from my buddy, and he said, that guy died of starvation.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, and then it became real. And so...
Yeah. And you saw it. I mean, what did you see when you went into the slum and you visited it? What kind of paint the picture a little bit?
It's like wood sticks bent over with plastic huts, and like people eating dog. It's really messed up.
And is this like just... Are there families, or is this just in like kids?
It's mainly widows and orphans. So grandmas and real little kids. Because the parents either leave or they died of AIDS or whatever the problem was, and it's just these widows and orphans, and it impacted me. I was like, I'm now held responsible.
Right.
For someone that didn't bring home an income for 4 years, was like, didn't have much in my cupboards, like, there's still stuff in the cupboards.
Right. It's not zero. Yeah.
There's not zero. And I could go to my friend's house and they would feed me dinner. And I mean, it's all right. There's $20 in the bank account. There's $20.
Right.
And so, I looked at that and I just kind of said, man, this life is worth is more than just me, and it's not about me. And so I need to make, it drove my purpose. And so relationship
So what do you do with Kenya now?
Well, I just got back in October. It was interesting. One of our quarterly goals, we did we built a greenhouse, and so it's one
greenhouse for the office.
It's one thing to sponsor a kid to feed them, but it's another thing to build a greenhouse and then teach a kid how to raise tomatoes and then sell the tomatoes.
Right.
And so one of our quarterly goals was, if we meet our quarterly goal, as owner of this business, I can say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to buy a greenhouse for these orphans. And that.
Where is the greenhouse?
It's in Kenya.
It's in Kenya.
Yeah, so we paid for it to be built, and now they grow and they produce I think it's about 200 kilos of tomatoes a week.
Wow, that's amazing.
Which create jobs, which teach the orphans how to do all this stuff, and then it supports about 6.5 kids full time to be fed, to be clothed, to be sheltered, and to go to school.
Wow.
So we ended up just buying another one at the end of this year.
Huh.
And then I'm looking at buying semis and different things. And
that's amazing, Conor.
There's a whole.
Thanks for sharing that.
There's a whole thing there.
So you want to erect more and more greenhouses, basically for food and employment and opportunity for.
Yeah, my whole thing is, okay, what happens if your support from the U.S. goes away? What interesting, what unique things can you do in Kenya that support itself? There's the biggest entrepreneurial ecosystem and people coming online is Africa.
Really?
That is the largest. I mean, there are so many people. The amount of, in Kenya alone, it's 60% of the population is under the age of 22. And there's 48 million people in Kenya or something like that. And so you've got all of these people coming online as consumers. And so if you can, and they're people, they're entrepreneurs. And so what I found out was that Kitale, Kenya is the breadbasket of Africa, basically. And so they have 3 harvests a year of corn. Not one, like the Midwest. You have 3. It's like this black, red, deep soil that just produces crops. And so I'm like, let's invest in agriculture. What does the agriculture infrastructure look like? Yeah. How are the roads? Should we buy semis? Should we buy grain elevators? Should we buy drying? How do you process those things? What is that? What are the markets? What do the ports look like? And so we're trying to develop, make investments and things like that, and it started a very small amount. When we started, I bought my buddy enough to make a chicken coop and buy 150 chickens, and he put it in his backyard. Yeah. And it grew into, I think there's now chicken coops for 4,000 chickens. There's 4 tilapia farms. And so what they're doing is the kids now eat tilapia, and then they sell the rest. And then the kids learn that business. The tomatoes is a whole thing. The chickens is a whole thing. And so they're not only teaching these kids the way of entrepreneurship, but they're teaching them that skill, and then we're investing those kids. So what do you do with these kids once they get out of high school or college? You got to help them start a business. Yeah. So now the kids that we originally started, with 15 years ago sponsoring, now we're looking at helping them get the startup funding for a pharmacy, for a hair salon, for all sorts of different things. And so you're not only teaching them skills and all the things, but you're building in a workforce and being able to then pump money into those systems. And it's all localized.
It's becoming self-sustaining.
Self-sustaining.
Yeah.
And so that whole, so now what that became is it became an orphanage with 200 girls, 100 boys. There's a feeding station and a school now about ready to be high school to help. I just bought like an industrial sewing machine, because when you have 350 kids in school, they all need sweaters and uniforms. And instead of buying them, we make them, and we pick the widow out of the that was in the slum, and we're like, you know how to sew this? Oh, what if you had a $2,000 sewing machine? And now they can do that, and now it's this self-fulfilling prophecy that there's just tons of opportunity there.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so capital, mid-market capital is the problem. And so I'm like, hey, what's the next project we can fund? What's the next project? What's the next project?
Yeah.
So
it's great stuff.
That's what I love.
Yeah, I love that. So the winery seems random.
Yeah, so it does seem random, and so.
But that was one of your first customers.
Not our
not
winery.
This one. Oh, okay.
But the guy who got me into the wine business, his winery, and so wine's a very interesting thing. So wine opens up doors, and it helps you build relationships. So if you have a bottle of wine from your own vineyard and winery, hey, want to come over and hang out and drink some wine? What do you do over wine or over dinner? You build a relationship. That goes much deeper than just something on the very shallow level. Mm-hmm. And so what the winery, the idea was, first I was just fascinated in the idea of the wine business and everything from being a farmer to making wine and being able to do that. So technology, very fast business. Wine, so I bought a cherry orchard in 2006.
Cherry.
I incorporated BombBomb a month later. So I started these two things at the same time.
Wow.
And from the time we bought the cherry orchard until I opened my first bottle of wine was 6 years.
You have some patience.
So BombBomb, 200 customers in a month. And now, we get 200 customers in a day sometimes. To the wine business, you harvest it, you stick it in a barrel, you let it sit, you let it sit, you let it sit for 18 months. Then you bottle it, you let it sit. Then you release it. Years and years from planting a vine to actually drinking your wine. And so it's this real interesting contrast of, but ultimately it's about relationships. Mm-hmm. Bringing people together, something you can talk about. It opens up doors. From the CEO Zillow to, anybody's interested. Because the typical adage in the wine business is, how do you make $1 million in the wine business? You start with 4. There's actually something to that. Right. It's about $4 million to get something going. Yeah. Our story is something very interesting we got in on a deal where typically you have to buy 40 acres in order to have an estate vineyard. We got this deal from a friend of mine, and it was grandfathered zonings from the 1800s from this old family that grew apple orchards and cherry orchard. And it was the one piece of zoning in Oregon that you could say you had an estate winery and make an estate bottled wine off of something less than 40 acres legally. And so the other thing is that there was a house on this property. And so I was able to get a residential second home loan on the property in order to get the deal. And so like all of these things came together. Right. And was able to pull it off where typically you'd have to have $4 million in capital in order to do it. Right. And I got a residential loan and worked a deal and then all off the gamble of that, this land is I want to tell a story off of land, and I want to do it to build relationships with people, because ultimately that will grow both of my businesses, and it's fun.
They work together. So where can people find out about that, purchase it, check it out?
Properwines.com.
Properwines.com.
Yeah, it's join the club. It's one release a year. It's a single vineyard Syrah. Less than 1% of all wine made in the world come from the people that grow it and make it. It's a very unique thing, and all the juice in that bottle comes from one place in the world, and that's our little vineyard on 8 acres in Milton Freewater. It's called the Rocks. It's these huge cobblestone rocks. I actually have one.
Yeah, pull it out.
This is a rock from my vineyard, and it basically, all the soil is just 200 feet deep of these rocks.
Really?
Yeah. It's a very unique place. It's one of we just got certified through the TTB. Oh, excuse me. I just burped.
You were thinking of the food and the wine.
I'm like, man, I'm freaking drinking. The TTB regulates what's called an American viticulture area, which we are one of the only sub-ABAs. It's called the Rocks of Milton Freewater. It's very unique place in the world. And it's the reason why I took the gamble on it.
All right. People, check out properwines.com. Hearing the story, Conor, thank you for sharing the Kenya story. The Proper Wine sounds great. BombBomb, the story is amazing. People may think, well, Conor comes from a pedigree of, did really well in high school, went on to college, went to wherever, some elite business school, then went on to start these companies, right? But you had a little bit of a non-traditional path.
Yeah. So I was a art major at Lansing Community College. I did that for 1 year and then dropped out and moved to Colorado. And the interesting part of that story is my business partner now, I met because I was stoned and drove underneath the hotel deal with my mountain bike on top and ripped the headset off of it. And so I couldn't ride my mountain bike. And I met my now business partner drinking beer and said, I don't have $100 to get this fixed. And he said, come paint the atrium of this hotel. I'll give you $100. We get chatting, blah, blah, blah. He was like, you should just come work with me. And I'm like, sweet. And so that atrium, we now, in the tower of that building, we now have the 7th and 6th floor of that building.
Wow.
And the people we subbed the business from painted our whole floor.
So what, did he have like a painting business, or what was
a painting business?
A painting business.
And so we started a painting business, and then that got us into the deck business, and then that's what turned.
That was the multifamily housing industry. Wow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it all started with the broken bike.
Broken headset.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. Conors.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So why did you move to, when you were moving to Colorado, why Colorado? What were you intending to do?
Well, I'm from Michigan,
right.
And I loved skiing in the mountains, mountain biking. And so I always wanted to move out here, and I just didn't have an excuse until then.
You just made your own excuse.
Yeah, my parents were not happy that I dropped out of college. But it's I wanted to be in the mountains, man. They were calling me, and so I've gotta love the mountains.
Yeah.
I just love them.
So you went from college to Colorado to the painting business to the multifamily housing industry, and then to the winery and the BombBomb video.
Billboards.
Oh, billboards.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost everything in the multifamily. We were growing just hugely fast, got into like remodeling and deck building and all this stuff, and we didn't use lawyers or accountants, and we got completely jacked out of like some contracts and
people not paying up and fulfilling on their end of the bargain.
And we ended up, we had 60 people about on staff, and we were, I was early 20s and didn't know what I was doing, and went for broke, and went broke, and ended up getting a job as a intern at Lamar Outdoor Advertising. So I went from running 60 people in about November to about February 1, I was filing things.
A little bit of a difference there.
Yeah. And I was living in somebody's basement. The mechanic next door, that we had an office, and there was a mechanic next door. He was like, "Hey, I know you're losing everything, and if you want to live in my basement, you can." And so I did that.
That's nice of him.
And then built my way up at Lamar and hustled.
So did you learn this hustle entrepreneurship? Your parents, or where does this come from?
My grandfather, my dad's an entrepreneur. My grandfather was a huge influence. But yeah, my dad and my grandfather are both entrepreneurs, and it was, you work my father ran a metal finishing company, and he was like, "Here's how you start. You start off on the lawn crew, and you mow the lawn for like 5 years. And then you go over to your grandpa's place and you mow the train tracks, or you weed whip the train tracks for a month." And that, like, one summer, my grandfather tore down a warehouse, and it was all the beams for the warehouse, big metal warehouse. And he said, "You know what you're going to do this summer? You're going to, for $4.23 an hour, you're going to take that he had a grinder, and he says you're going to grind all the metal to bare metal and then paint it." And so for a summer,
Wow.
he'd pick me up from my house, drop me off, and he'd be like, "Go grind that 50-foot, those 50-foot beams, and then paint them."
Right.
My uncle called me up like a year ago and said, we finally scrapped that metal building that Grandpa made you do. And I'm like, what the heck? So they would just, it's Michigan, Midwest, work ethic, You work your butt off. You do everything so you know it. Like at BombBomb, I answered me and Darren were the head of support. I mean, we would answer the call. Steve, who's now our CMO, the VP of Move, we ended up hiring him. He would call in. I'd be like, BombBomb. He'd be like, Conor. I'd be like, I'm just trying to keep, close to our customers. And he didn't know I actually had to answer the phone.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was.
Yeah. Well, I see a book, like if you ever do write a book, it's a true grind. Like you experienced a true grind from early on.
Yeah, true grind.
Yeah. So
it's it's like what I said. You show up.
Yeah.
You just go. You just keep on going.
Yeah.
Perseverance.
Conor, thank you. I really want to be the first one to thank you. This has been hugely valuable. Everyone should check out BombBomb.com, exactly BombBomb.com, and check it out. It wowed me when I first got my first BombBomb, and also ProperWines.com. Any final parting words, Conor, that anything we missed with lessons or stories?
No, it's I was talking to this guy on Saturday, an electrician, and he was doing some stuff. He said, "What was your what's your one word of advice? I want to start my own business." I was like, I don't know. Oh my God! Yeah.
Now you have an answer. It's just grind, and you tell that story.
And I thought about it, and he left, and I said, the biggest thing that I did was when we were at 4 people, I set out, here are the values I'm going to live by. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to hold myself accountable to that. And no matter what, it doesn't make economic sense a lot of the time. But if you can go to bed and if you can leave it all on the field and knowing that you lived up to those values, it doesn't matter what people say about you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Check out BombBomb.com. Conor, thanks again.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100 grand.